My hands froze over the warm dough, flour dusting my fingers like snow, when the door chimes sang their familiar melody. But the scent that rolled through my bakery made my wolf recoil in recognition. Pine and winter storms. Steel and authority. 5 years of carefully constructed normalcy shattered in the space between one heartbeat and the next. Damian. The Alpha King stood in my doorway, broad shoulders filling the frame, dark hair pulled back to reveal a face that haunted my dreams and nightmares in equal measure. His silver eyes, the unmistakable mark of the Silvercrest bloodline, swept the small shop with calculated precision. Behind him, 3 warriors blocked the exit, their presence turning my cozy bakery into a cage. My son, Elliot, sat at his usual corner table by the window, his small hands carefully arranging his collection of smooth river stones. 5 years old. Dark hair that fell in waves just like his father's. And those eyes, those devastating silver eyes that marked him as clearly as a brand. I watched recognition dawn across Damian's face like a sunrise, beautiful and terrible. His nostrils flared slightly, taking in the scent he'd surely been tracking. His gaze locked onto Elliot with an intensity that made my knees weak. Welcome to Floxy's Shifter Romance Tales. Before we dive in, I'd love your support. Kindly hit the likes button and let the story hit 200 likes. Also, subscribe, drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from. Your engagement means the world to me. The resemblance was undeniable. The same strong jawline already evident in Elliot's round face. The same way they both tilted their heads when concentrating. The same silver streaks threading through dark hair, a genetic marker that appeared in every Silvercrest male from birth. Mommy, who's the big man? Elliot's voice, clear and curious, cut through the tension like a knife. I opened my mouth to lie, to deflect, to do anything to protect the fragile world I'd built. But Damian moved first, crossing the floor with predatory grace. He stopped 3 feet from Elliot's table, and I saw his hand tremble before he clenched it into a fist. How old is your boy? His voice was deceptively soft, but I heard the command beneath it. The Alpha speaking, not the man. My throat closed. 4. The lie tasted like ash. Damian's jaw tightened. Without breaking eye contact with me, he reached up and loosened the collar of his black shirt, revealing the mark just below his collarbone. A crescent moon birthmark, silver against his tanned skin. My heart stopped. Every male in the Silvercrest line carried that mark. Every single one. I knew, with the certainty of a mother who had memorized every inch of her child's body, that Elliot bore the same mark on his left shoulder blade. I'd traced it 1,000 times, wondering if this day would ever come, praying it wouldn't. Lying to your Alpha? Damian's voice dropped to a growl. Strip his shirt. Now. Or I will. The warriors tensed at the doorway. One of them, a woman with copper hair I vaguely recognized as his second-in-command, took a step forward. Please, I whispered, my voice breaking. Not here. Not in front of him like this. But Elliot, curious and fearless in the way children are before the world teaches them caution, was already pulling at his shirt. I have a special moon, too. Mommy says it makes me extra special. He turned, revealing the pale skin of his small back and the perfect crescent birthmark resting between his shoulder blades. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Damian's eyes flashed pure molten silver, his wolf rising so close to the surface I could almost see it. His warriors shifted uneasily, recognizing what I'd kept hidden for 5 years. The Alpha King had found his heir. And the reckoning I'd feared since the moment I'd fled the capital had finally arrived. 6 years ago, I'd smelled of yeast and exhaustion more than wolf. The royal kitchens in Silvercrest Palace were a labyrinth of heat and chaos, where servants like me existed as shadows. Nameless hands to knead bread and scrub burnt pans. Too small, too quiet, too omega to matter to anyone. My world consisted of pre-dawn mornings and late-night cleanup shifts, of stone floors that hurt my feet and copper pots that weighed more than they should. The narrow window high above the bread ovens offered my only glimpse of sky, a thin slice of blue that changed with the seasons but never seemed to grow larger. The first time Damian walked into the kitchens, I felt him before I saw him. The air shifted, conversations died mid-sentence, and a hush fell like someone had thrown a blanket over sound itself. I was elbow-deep in bread dough, flour streaking my apron, when I finally looked up. He stood framed in the archway, power rolling off him in waves. At 26, he'd been Alpha King for only 2 years, but he wore authority like a second skin. Leather riding clothes, dark hair still windswept from whatever journey he'd just completed, silver eyes surveying the kitchen with an intensity that made my stomach flip. Kings didn't visit kitchens. Kings belonged in throne rooms and war councils, making decisions that shaped territories while people like me made their bread and hoped to stay invisible. But there he was. And his gaze found mine across the chaos of the kitchen like an arrow finding its target. I dropped my eyes so fast I nearly lost my balance, heart hammering against my ribs. "Continue working," the head cook snapped, though his voice shook slightly. Everyone scrambled back to their tasks, but I could feel the weight of attention still fixed on me. Footsteps crossed the flagstones. Stopped directly in front of my workstation. "Your name." Not a question. A command wrapped in a voice like smoke and stone. My fingers gripped the edge of the dough bowl hard enough to hurt. "Sera, Your Majesty." "Look at me, Sera." Everything in me screamed to refuse, to keep my eyes down where they belonged. But my body obeyed before my mind could protest. When I met his silver gaze, the world tilted sideways. Up close, he was devastating. Sharp cheekbones, a mouth that suggested both cruelty and kindness, a thin scar cutting through his left eyebrow. He smelled like winter forests and something wild that made my wolf stir for the first time in months. "How long have you served here?" 2 years, sire." "Family?" The question startled me. "None, Your Majesty." Something flickered in his eyes, too quick to name. He studied me for another heartbeat, and I felt strangely exposed, as if he could see past the flour dust and exhaustion to something beneath. Then he nodded once and left, taking all the oxygen in the room with him. I told myself it meant nothing. That kings noticed servants sometimes, that I'd simply been standing in the right place at the wrong time. But he came back the next day. And the day after that. Sometimes he spoke to the cook about the evening meal. Sometimes he simply walked through, pausing to inspect the bread or ask a question about supplies. But his eyes always found me, lingering just a fraction too long, making my pulse race and my wolf press against my ribs with curiosity. 3 weeks after that first encounter, I found him waiting in the herb garden at twilight. I'd gone out to cut rosemary for the evening stew, grateful for a moment of cool air after hours beside the ovens. The sun had just set, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold. I rounded the corner of the garden shed and stopped dead. Damian leaned against the stone wall, cloak thrown back, arms crossed over his chest. He looked less like a king and more like the warrior the songs whispered about, dangerous and beautiful in equal measure. I started to back away. "Forgive me, Your Majesty. I didn't know." "Stay." The single word vibrated with alpha command, not the crushing force he used on the pack, but a gentler pull that my wolf wanted desperately to follow. He picked a sprig of lavender from the garden bed, rolling it between his fingers. "You avoid my eyes when I speak to you." "I'm an Omega," I managed, staring at my worn boots. "It's not my place to meet an alpha's gaze. Especially not the king's. And yet you just met it to tell me why you can't." Heat flooded my cheeks. I apologize, I didn't mean." He laughed, quiet and warm. "Interesting." No one had ever called me interesting before. I was furniture. Background noise. Easily replaced. For a long moment, there was only the evening song of crickets and the distant sounds of the palace settling for the night. Then he asked, so casually it felt dangerous, "Do you know how to read?" I blinked. "No, Your Majesty." "Would you like to learn?" Finally, I looked up, because I couldn't help it. "Why?" His silver eyes caught the last light of day. Because your mind is too sharp to waste scrubbing pots. And because when an alpha's wolf notices an omega trying this hard to be invisible, he gets curious. My heart forgot its rhythm. My wolf surged forward, ears perked, tail wagging despite my best efforts to push her down. I'm nobody, I whispered. For now. He stepped closer, and the space between us crackled with something I didn't have a name for. Meet me here tomorrow night after the last bell. If you wish to learn. He paused, silver eyes boring into mine. If you wish to be seen. I didn't sleep that night. Every instinct I developed as an omega screamed warnings. Keep your head down. Don't draw attention. Never, ever tempt an alpha, especially not one who could crush you with a word. But when the last bell tolled the following evening, I was already in the garden, heart in my throat. He was waiting with a stack of worn books and a single wildflower, a rare silver bloom I'd only seen in paintings. For you, he said simply. Everyone deserves something beautiful. No one had ever given me anything before. My fingers trembled as I accepted the flower, its petals soft as silk. That night, he taught me the first letters of the pack's written language. His hands were warm and rough when they guided mine across the parchment, steadying my grip on the charcoal. Every time our shoulders brushed, electricity raced along my skin. We met the next night. And the next. He brought more books, more flowers. He asked about my childhood in the orphanage, about the matron who'd been kind and the others who hadn't, about my dreams that I'd never spoken aloud to anyone. He listened like my words were treasures instead of the rambling thoughts of a kitchen servant. One night, as the full moon rose overhead, he asked, "Do you know what happens when an alpha finds his fated mate?" My throat went dry. The old stories say the bond strikes like lightning. That the wolf knows before the human does. Sometimes, he said softly, stepping close enough that I could see flecks of gold in his silver eyes, the human knows first. His voice dropped to barely more than a breath. My wolf went still the moment I stepped into that kitchen and caught your scent. Every time you look away from me, he snarls. I haven't slept a full night since without dreaming of you. The world tilted. I'm an omega. Kings don't bond with omegas. Kings obey the moon like everyone else. His hand lifted, hovering near my cheek without quite touching. Sera, you are my fated mate. The words slammed into me with physical force. My wolf surged, howling with wild, terrified joy. Something inside my chest snapped tight, a golden thread I'd never felt before, tying me to him in a way that transcended logic. I should have refused. Should have run even then. Instead, 2 nights later under the full moon, I went to him in a hidden glade beyond the palace walls. He met me there, silver eyes glowing in the moonlight, and when his skin touched mine, the bond locked into place. It felt like being remade. Like every cell in my body had been waiting for this moment, for him. His emotions crashed through me, joy, hunger, fierce protective love, and I felt my own reflected back through the golden thread between us. For 3 months after that, I lived in secret chambers above his private study. Hidden passages and coded knocks separated my old life from my new. I learned what it meant to be loved by an alpha who commanded armies but brought me tea when I couldn't sleep. Who asked my opinion on trade agreements and patrol schedules as if my thoughts mattered. He told me things late at night that he said he'd never told anyone. About the weight of the crown, the crushing responsibility, the fear that he'd fail the pack the way his father had. I started to believe I had a future. That he'd find a way to tell the council, whether their outrage, and make me his queen. Then his brother Julian returned from the border wars, and everything shattered. It was late, the palace mostly quiet except for the wind howling outside. I woke to raised voices below, muffled but sharp. Damian had left our bed an hour earlier, pressing a kiss to my forehead and murmuring about council business. I should have stayed where I was, warm and safe. Instead, I pulled on one of his shirts and slipped into the narrow servants' passage that ran behind his study. I'd discovered it weeks ago, a crack in the wall hidden behind a tapestry that allowed sound to travel. I pressed my ear to the cold stone. She's a liability, brother. Julian's voice, smooth and cold as ice. An Omega who knows military strategies, trade routes, patrol schedules. If the Southern Pacts discover you've been pillow-talking with a servant, they'll use it to destroy you. My blood turned to ice. She's loyal, Damian said, but his voice sounded strained. Loyal now, Julian countered. But what happens when someone threatens her life? When they offer her gold or safety in exchange for information? Fear is a weapon, Damian. One you've handed to your enemies wrapped in a pretty bow. Silence. Heavy and suffocating. What do you suggest? Damian finally asked. My hand flew to my stomach, to the secret I'd only just discovered. 2 weeks late. Morning sickness. The faint but unmistakable scent of new life growing inside me. She needs to be removed, Julian said softly. Permanently. Before word spreads. Before anyone realizes the great Alpha King has made such a dangerous mistake. I waited for Damian's denial. For his fury, for the growl that meant his wolf was about to tear someone apart. Instead, after a silence that felt like dying, I heard him say, "You're right." The world stopped. I'll handle it myself, he continued, voice hollow. No one else touches her. My breath caught in my throat, strangling me. The mate bond, usually warm and comforting, felt like barbed wire wrapped around my heart. He'd agreed. The Alpha King had agreed that his Omega mate, pregnant with his child, was a problem to be eliminated. I didn't wait to hear more. I stumbled back from the wall, one hand pressed to my stomach, the other covering my mouth to muffle the sob trying to escape. That night, I did the only thing I knew how to do. I ran. I ran with 17 silver coins sewn into the hem of my skirt and the shirt on my back that still smelled like him. The first night, I made it to a traveler's inn at the territory border before my legs gave out. I slept in the stable, shivering in the straw, one hand pressed protectively over my belly where the tiniest spark of life pulsed. Every sound made me flinch. Every shadow could have been one of Damian's scouts coming to finish what he'd started. By dawn, I was moving again. For 2 months, I kept to forgotten roads and forest paths, avoiding the main routes where royal patrols traveled. I bartered my fine palace shoes for a worn cloak in a border village. I traded my silver coins one by one for passage on merchant carts, for stale bread, for a place to sleep that wasn't dirt. The pregnancy made everything harder. The bone-deep exhaustion, the constant nausea, the way my wolf whimpered endlessly for her mate. I ignored her. I had to. Our survival depended on silence. The snowstorm hit in late winter in a village so small it barely had a name. I'd been working in the baker's kitchen for 2 weeks, keeping my head down, my growing belly hidden under loose aprons. But labor started during the evening rush, sharp and vicious, doubling me over behind the brick ovens. The baker's wife took one look at my face and shook her head. Not here, girl. Old Meredith lives at the forest's edge. She's a healer. Go now before the snow gets worse. I stumbled through knee-deep drifts, following a path I could barely see. The wind screamed through the trees, and my wolf clawed at me to shift, to find safety, to run home. But home wanted me dead. Meredith's cottage appeared like a miracle, smoke curling from the chimney, warm light glowing through frost-covered windows. She opened the door before I could knock, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside. You're early, she said, guiding me to a bed piled with furs. Or you've been pushing too hard. Either way, this baby's coming tonight. I gave birth as the storm raged outside, biting down on leather to keep from screaming. When Elliot finally slipped into the world, tiny and perfect and wailing, I sobbed so hard I couldn't catch my breath. A boy, Meredith said, wrapping him in clean cloth. Strong lungs. He'll survive. She placed him in my arms, and I stared down at a face already so much like his father's it hurt. The same dark hair with those telltale silver streaks. The same determined set to his tiny jaw. My heart broke open and rebuilt itself around him in a single instant. What will you name him? Meredith asked. Elliot, I whispered. After my grandfather, a man too long dead to be dangerous. Elliot Ashford. My mother's family name. Not mine. Not Damian's. Something untraceable. Meredith asked no questions about the father. She let me stay through the winter, teaching me how to care for an infant while the snow piled higher outside. When spring came, I left coins on her table and disappeared into the thaw. For 3 years, Elliot and I moved like ghosts. I worked in kitchens because it was what I knew, scrubbing pots in taverns and bakeries, keeping to the shadows. Elliot learned to walk in cramped back rooms that smelled of yeast and would smoke. He learned to talk while I worked, his first words mama and bread. Every time someone looked at him too long, we moved. Every time I caught the scent of Silvercrest wolves on the wind, we packed and left before dawn. I taught him young to hide what he was. When his eyes flashed silver during a tantrum, I covered them and whispered, "Never let them see, baby. Never." When his baby teeth came in sharper than they should, I taught him to smile with his mouth closed. When he shifted for the first time at barely 2 years old, far too early, a sign of powerful bloodline, I held his tiny wolf form and cried into his silver-streaked fur. He was beautiful and impossible and so dangerous to both of us. Pinehaven found us by chance. I'd been traveling west, away from territories I knew Damian controlled, when our wagon threw a wheel half a day's walk from the village. The merchant left us there with apologies and our meager bags. Elliot was nearly 4 then, curious and energetic and asking 1,000 questions I couldn't answer. We walked into Pinehaven as the sun set, and something in my chest eased for the first time in years. The village was remote, nestled in a valley so isolated that even merchants rarely visited. Most residents were human or dormant wolves who'd never experienced a shift. No one here would recognize an alpha's mark. The bakery was called Morning Glory, and it was falling apart. The owner, an elderly woman named Constance, sat outside shelling peas when we arrived. She looked us over with shrewd eyes, then at Elliot hiding behind my skirts. "Running from something or to something?" she asked. I nearly bolted. But something in her lined face was kind. Weary but kind. "Running," I admitted quietly. She nodded. "Thought so. You have that look." She went back to her peas. "I need help in the bakery. Room upstairs, small wage. Interested?" I should have been suspicious. Should have asked questions. But Elliot was hungry and exhausted, and I was out of options. "Yes," I said. We stayed. A year later, Constance called me to her bedside. She was dying, had been dying slowly since we arrived, her lungs failing. She had no children, no family, nothing but the bakery that had been her life. "I'm leaving it to you," she rasped. "You've earned it, girl. Worked harder than anyone I've seen. And that boy." She smiled faintly. "That boy deserves a home." I cried when she died. For the first time since fleeing Damian, I let myself grieve, for Constance, for the life I'd lost, for the mate bond that still pulled at me like a barely healed wound. I renamed the bakery Moonrise, a bitter joke and a reminder and a dare to fate all at once. For 2 years, we built a life there. I became known as the widow whose husband died in the border wars, a tragic backstory that explained why I raised Elliot alone. I taught him to read using old books Constance had left behind. I taught him pack histories and whispers late at night. I taught him to control his shifts, to hide his strength, to never, ever show what he could do. "Why can't I run as fast as I want?" he asked once, frustrated after I'd scolded him for nearly outpacing a grown man during a village foot race. "Because you're special," I told him, brushing silver-streaked hair from his forehead. "And special things have to be careful." He accepted it because he was young, because he trusted me. But every year he looked more like Damian. Every year the resemblance became harder to hide. Every year I looked over my shoulder, waiting for the moment it would all fall apart. 5 years of peace. 5 years of fear. 5 years that ended the moment the Alpha King walked through my bakery door. The bell above the door chimed as the last customer left, and suddenly the cozy bakery felt like a trap. Damian hadn't moved from where he stood, 3 feet from Elliot's table, his warriors still blocking the exits. I stepped around the counter, flour still dusting my hands, positioning myself between the Alpha King and my son. "Not here," I said, proud that my voice only shook a little. "Please. Not in front of him." Damian's silver eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my knees weak. The mate bond, dormant but never gone, surged to life between us like wildfire. I felt his emotions crash through the connection, shock, rage, and beneath it all, a grief so profound it nearly brought me to my knees. "Clear the building," he said without looking away from me. One of his warriors moved immediately, ushering a confused Elliot toward the back room. "Mommy?" Elliot's voice was small, frightened. "It's okay, baby," I lied. "Just go with the nice lady. I'll be right there." The female warrior, copper-haired and sharp-eyed, gave me a look that might have been sympathetic before leading Elliot away. Another warrior followed, and I heard the back door close softly. Alone with Damian for the first time in 5 years, the air felt too thin. "Talk," he commanded, and though he didn't raise his voice, the alpha authority in it made my wolf whimper. I moved to the table where Elliot had been sitting, sinking into the chair before my legs gave out. Damian didn't sit. He loomed over me like a storm about to break. "Start at the beginning," he said, voice deadly quiet. "And don't lie to me again, Sera." Hearing my name on his lips after so long felt like a physical blow. I locked my gaze on the wooden tabletop, on the small scratches Elliot had made drawing pictures with his fingernail. "I heard you," I whispered. 5.5 years ago. In your study. You and Julian." His jaw tightened, muscles bunching. "He said I was a liability. That an Omega who knew too much could be used against you. He said I needed to be removed. Permanently." My voice cracked on the last word. "And you agreed. You said you'd handle it yourself." The silence that followed was deafening. "Is that what you thought?" His voice came out raw, disbelieving. "That I stood in my own study and agreed to murder my mate? What else was I supposed to think?" I looked up, tears burning my eyes. "I was pregnant, Damian. You hadn't told the council about me. I was a nameless Omega hidden in your chambers. I heard you agree she had to be removed. What other she could there have been?" He swore, the word vicious and ugly. He dragged both hands through his hair, then braced them on the table, leaning in until we were eye to eye. "The Omega in that conversation," he bit out, "was Julian's mistress. A woman named Lydia who'd been feeding information to the southern packs. Troop movements. Guard rotations. Weaknesses in our border defenses." I blinked. The words didn't make sense at first, like he was speaking a different language. "What?" "Julian wanted her executed," Damian continued, silver eyes blazing. "Public execution to send a message about betrayal. I refused. I exiled her instead, stripped her of rank and sent her beyond our borders where she couldn't do more damage." My stomach lurched. "You think I would risk everything, the throne, the pack, my own honor, to be with a kitchen servant, but then turn around and kill my fated mate because she overheard some strategic discussions?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it, only pain. "You think I'm capable of that?" "I heard you agree," I said weakly. "I agreed that Lydia was a liability," he snapped. "I agreed that someone who'd already betrayed us couldn't stay in the capital. I never agreed to kill anyone. And even if I had been discussing an execution for treason," his voice broke. "Do you truly believe I'd put you, my mate, my other half, in the same category as a traitor?" My carefully constructed certainty crumbled. 5 years of fear, of running, of building a life on the foundation of his supposed betrayal, all of it fracturing under the weight of his words. "You disappeared," he said quietly, anger draining into something hollow. "I woke up and you were gone. No scent trail, no note, nothing. I thought you'd been taken. Kidnapped. I tore the palace apart. Put every tracker I had on the roads. My chest ached. I thought. I spent 3 years searching, he interrupted. 3 years following dead ends and ghost trails. The bond kept pulling me toward you but never quite close enough. My advisors thought I was losing my mind. The council whispered that a mate had made me weak, that you'd proven them right by vanishing. His eyes shone, not with alpha power this time, but with unshed tears. After the 3rd year, when every trail had gone cold, I realized there was only one explanation. You'd run on your own. Which meant either I'd done something unforgivable. He swallowed hard. Or you'd never trusted me at all. The mate bond pulsed between us, 5 years of pain flowing through that golden thread. I was trying to protect our child, I whispered. I was already pregnant when I left. I thought you'd kill me to protect the pack, and I couldn't let our baby die. The room went absolutely silent. Damian stared at me, every muscle frozen. Say that again. I was pregnant when I ran. I found out days before I overheard you and Julian. I thought, my voice broke. I thought you'd choose the kingdom over us. How old? The question came out barely above a whisper. My mouth opened. The lie I'd told earlier hovered on my tongue. But there was nowhere left to hide. 5. He turned 5 at the last winter moon. His eyes closed. For a moment, the fearsome Alpha King disappeared, and he was just a man who'd been broken one too many times. 5 years, he murmured. 5 years of first words. First steps. First shifts. 5 years of teaching him to hold a wooden sword, to ride a horse, to be brave. His voice dropped to barely audible. 5 years of my son's laughter. Of watching him grow. Of being his father. Each word was a knife between my ribs. You stole that from me, he said, eyes opening to pin me with a look of such profound hurt I couldn't breathe. Because you heard half a conversation and decided your fear mattered more than our bond. Tears streamed down my face. I thought you'd kill me. I would have burned the kingdom to the ground before letting anyone touch you, he said flatly. You were my mate. You are my mate. Damn you. The bond thrummed with the truth of it, with 5 years of grief and fury and love that had never died despite everything. He pushed away from the table, pacing like a caged wolf. Elliot is the heir to the Silvercrest territories. He has alpha blood, royal blood. Out here, he's vulnerable. Unprotected. In the capital, he'll be trained, guarded, given everything he deserves. Panic clawed up my throat. The council will accept him, Damian cut in. Because I'm not asking their permission. I'm telling them. His silver eyes locked on mine. You'll both return to the capital with me. I'll announce him as my son and heir. There's no other option. They'll take him from me, I whispered. An Omega who hid the heir. Who fled the kingdom. There are laws. I won't allow it. The command in his voice was absolute. But if you fight me, if you run again, if you force me into a public battle over custody. He shook his head. You know how it will look. An Omega who kidnapped the Alpha King's son and hid him for 5 years. No council in any territory would side with you. My stomach dropped. He was right, and we both knew it. You're giving me no choice. I'm giving you the only chance you have, he replied. Come with me willingly, Sera. As Elliot's mother. As my mate. Or I'll take him anyway, and you'll have nothing. The mate bond pulled, pleading. Behind the door to the back room, I could hear Elliot's muffled voice asking questions, still innocent and unaware that his world was about to shatter. For 5 years, I'd run from this moment. There was nowhere left to go. I need time, I managed. To pack. To explain things to him. You have until dawn, Damian said. We leave at first light. Then he turned and walked toward the door, warriors falling into formation behind him. He paused at the threshold, looking back over his shoulder. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I never stopped looking for you. I never stopped hoping you'd come home. His silver eyes held mine. Even after I accepted you'd chosen to leave, I couldn't let go of the bond. 5 years of ruling a kingdom while half my soul was missing. He exhaled slowly. Tomorrow, we go home. All of us. And we figure out how to fix what we broke. Then he was gone, taking all the oxygen in the room with him. I sat alone in my bakery, flour still dusting my hands, and cried for everything we'd lost and everything we still might lose before this was over. That night was the longest of my life. I sat Elliot down in our small room above the bakery and tried to explain the unexplainable to a 5-year-old. The king is your father, I said, brushing his hair back from his face. Do you remember when I told you your daddy was a great warrior who had to go away? Elliot nodded, silver eyes wide. Well, he didn't know about you until today. But now he does, and he wants us to come live with him in his big castle. Really? Wonder filled his face. Will there be horses? And swords? Can I learn to fight? My heart broke a little. He was so young, so trusting. Yes, baby. All of that. Why didn't you tell him about me before? How do you explain fear to a child? How do you tell your son that you ran because you thought his father would kill you? I made a mistake, I said simply. A big one. And now we have to fix it. Elliot thought about this seriously. Will he be mad at me? No. That, at least, I knew with certainty. He could never be mad at you. You didn't do anything wrong. We packed our few belongings in the darkness. Elliot's collection of river stones. The wooden wolf I'd carved for him. The blanket Constance had knitted. Everything we owned fit into 2 small bags, a testament to how lightly we'd learned to travel. As dawn painted the sky in shades of rose and gold, Damian's warriors arrived. This time, there were at least 20 of them, forming an intimidating escort that made the village early risers stop and stare. Damian himself stood beside a massive black stallion, dressed in traveling leathers that made him look every inch the warrior king. When he saw Elliot clutching my hand, something softened in his harsh features. He knelt in the dirt, bringing himself to eye level with our son. Hello, Elliot, he said quietly. My name is Damian. I'm your father. Elliot studied him with the serious intensity only children possess. You look like me, he finally said. A smile ghosted across Damian's face. I was thinking the same thing. He held out his hand. Would you like to ride with me today? Elliot looked up at me for permission. My throat closed, but I nodded. Okay, Elliot said, placing his tiny hand in Damian's much larger one. The gesture was so simple, so trusting, that tears burned my eyes. I watched Damian lift our son onto the stallion with practiced ease, settling behind him with arms that would keep him safe. You'll ride with Cassandra, Damian told me, gesturing to the copper-haired warrior from yesterday. She's my second in command and one of the finest riders in the kingdom. Cassandra inclined her head. Luna, she said, and the title made me flinch. I wasn't a Luna. I was a runaway Omega who'd hidden the air. But I climbed onto the horse behind her without argument, and we began the journey that would change everything. The first day passed in awkward silence broken only by Elliot's endless questions. He asked about everything, the forest, the warriors, why some of them had scars, whether there were really dragons in the mountains. Damian answered every question with surprising patience, his deep voice carrying back to where I rode. I watched them together, saw how carefully Damian adjusted his hold to keep Elliot secure, how he pointed out landmarks and told stories about the territories we passed through. He was a natural father. The realization hurt more than I expected. On the second day, we stopped to water the horses by a clear stream. Elliot immediately started catching minnows with his hands, laughing when they slipped through his fingers. Damian crouched beside him, showing him how to move slowly so the fish wouldn't spook. I stood apart, watching, until Cassandra appeared at my elbow. He's not what you expected, is he? She said quietly. I glanced at her. What do you mean? The king. Most people expect him to be harsh, unyielding. They forget he's also a man who mourned his mate for 5 years. Her gaze was knowing. He never gave up hope of finding you. He should have, I said bitterly. I'm the one who ran. Yes. But he's also the one who chose to believe you had a reason. She studied me. The council wanted him to declare you dead. To move on, take a new mate, produce an heir. He refused every time. My chest tightened. I'm not saying he's not angry, Cassandra continued. He is. Furious, actually. But he's also relieved you're alive. That his son exists. Anger and love aren't mutually exclusive, Luna. Before I could respond, Elliot shrieked with laughter as he finally caught a fish. Damian grinned, actually grinned, and helped him release it back into the water. That night, after Elliot fell asleep wrapped in furs by the fire, the distance between Damian and me shrank incrementally. He sat across the flames from me, silver eyes reflecting the firelight. Thank you, he said quietly. I blinked. For what? For keeping him alive. Safe. Strong. He stared into the flames. I'm furious with you for taking him. For stealing 5 years. But I can't deny you did everything right. He's healthy. Happy. Curious. Brave. His gaze lifted to mine. That's because of you. The acknowledgement shouldn't have mattered, but it cracked something open in my chest. I never wanted to hurt you, I whispered. I know. He was quiet for a long moment. I've spent 5 years trying to understand why you ran. Building scenarios in my mind. Some days I convinced myself you'd never loved me at all, that the bond meant nothing. Other days. He trailed off. Other days? Other days I remembered how you looked at me in that garden. How you trembled when we completed the mating bond. How you laughed at my terrible jokes and fell asleep listening to my heartbeat. His voice roughened. Those days, I knew you'd been afraid. That somehow, I'd failed to make you feel safe enough to stay. Tears slipped down my cheeks. It wasn't your fault. Wasn't it? He leaned forward, firelight throwing his face into sharp relief. I knew the council would fight the bond. I knew they'd call you unworthy, a liability, a dozen other cruel things. And instead of preparing you for that, instead of standing in front of the pack and claiming you publicly, I hid you away like a secret I was ashamed of. You weren't ashamed. I was protecting my crown, he interrupted. I told myself I needed time to bring the council around. To make them see what I saw in you. But the truth is, I took the coward's path. I chose the easy route of keeping you hidden instead of fighting for you from the start. His silver eyes gleamed. So when you overheard that conversation and ran, when you believed I'd choose the pack over you, maybe you were right. I hadn't proven otherwise. The mate bond pulsed between us, carrying his regret, his guilt, his fierce determination that things would be different this time. I won't make that mistake again, he said. When we reach the capital, I'm claiming you publicly. As my mate. As Luna. As the mother of my heir. Anyone who objects can challenge me in the circle. The council will riot. Let them. His smile was sharp and feral. I've waited 5 years to get my mate back. I'm not hiding you ever again. On the 4th day, Cassandra taught Elliot how to braid his hair. She wove the dark strands with practiced fingers, leaving one thin silver streak loose to catch the light. In the capital, she told him, young alphas wear their braids like this when they start training. It shows everyone you're important. Elliot touched the braid reverently. Will the other kids be nice to me? Some will, Cassandra said honestly. Some won't. But you'll have your father's protection and your mother's strength. That's more than most. That evening, Damian asked Elliot about his life in Pinehaven. They sat together by the fire, and our son told stories about helping me in the bakery, about his friends in the village, about the time he'd accidentally shifted during a game of hide and seek and scared everyone. You shifted alone? Damian's voice was carefully neutral, but I felt his concern through the bond. Mommy was there, Elliot said quickly. She always makes sure I'm safe when the wolf comes. Damian's eyes found mine across the fire. Something passed between us, shared understanding, shared worry. 5 years old was too young to shift alone. It spoke to the strength of Elliot's alpha bloodline, but also to how much danger he could be in without proper training. When we get home, Damian said, I'll teach you how to control it better. So you can shift whenever you want, not just when your wolf decides. Really? Elliot's face lit up. Really? But there are rules. Important ones. Damian's expression grew serious. Your wolf is powerful, Elliot. More powerful than you understand yet. That power can hurt people if you're not careful. Do you understand? Our son nodded solemnly. Good. Then we'll start training the day after we arrive. He ruffled Elliot's hair. You're going to be a great alpha someday. Just like your mother is a great Luna. I choked on the water I'd been drinking. Luna. He'd called me Luna in front of our son, in front of his warriors, as if it was already decided. As if I'd already earned a title I'd spent 5 years running from. That night, after Elliot fell asleep, Damian found me standing at the edge of camp, staring up at the stars. Can't sleep? He asked quietly. Too much on my mind. He stood beside me, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. The mate bond hummed between us, warm and insistent. I'm still angry, he said after a moment. I know. But I'm also grateful you're alive. That he's alive. That I get a second chance at this. He turned to look at me. I won't waste it, Sera. Whatever happens when we reach the capital, whatever the council says, whatever challenges we face, we do it together this time. The stars blurred as tears filled my eyes. I don't know how to be what you need. I need you to be you, he said simply. The woman who kept my son safe for 5 years. Who built a life from nothing. Who was brave enough to run when she thought she had to, and brave enough to come back when the time came. His hand found mine in the darkness. That's the woman I chose. That's the woman my wolf recognized. That's who I need. His fingers laced through mine, warm and calloused and steady. I'm scared, I admitted. Good. His thumb traced circles on the back of my hand. Fear means you care about the outcome. It means you're invested. I can work with fear. He squeezed gently. What I can't work with is silence. No more running. No more hiding. If you're afraid, tell me. If you're angry, show me. But don't ever disappear again without giving me a chance to fight for you. The bond flared bright between us, carrying his sincerity, his determination, his love that had survived 5 years of grief and uncertainty. Okay, I whispered. No more running. He pulled me closer, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. I let myself lean into him, breathing in his scent of pine and winter storms, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong beneath my cheek. For the first time in 5 years, the mate bond didn't ache with distance and longing. It felt whole. On the 5th day, the capital came into view. The capital city of Silvercrest rose before us like something from a dream. Massive stone walls surrounded a sprawling fortress that seemed to grow straight out of the mountainside. Towers reached toward the sky, banners snapping in the wind. Even from a distance, I could feel the pulse of thousands of wolves, the concentrated power of the pack's heart. Elliot gasped. It's so big. That's your home, Damian said quietly, adjusting his hold on our son. Our home. The word sent a shiver through me. Home. For 5 years, home had been wherever I could keep us hidden. The thought of staying in one place, of being visible, of being claimed, it terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. As we approached the gates, horns sounded. Long, echoing notes that rolled across the valley like thunder. By the time we passed beneath the iron portcullis, the courtyard was packed. Thousands of wolves in human form lined the walls and filled every available space. Warriors, elders, families with children, all of them staring as we rode through. The noise was a low roar of speculation and curiosity. Elliot pressed back against Damian's chest, suddenly small and afraid. "There's so many people." "They're here to see their prince," Damian murmured. "To see you." He guided his horse to the center of the courtyard and raised one hand. The crowd fell silent with startling speed, thousands of eyes fixed on their king. Damian lifted Elliot, setting him on his shoulders so everyone could see. The gesture was unmistakable. This child was his, claimed and protected. "My people," Damian's voice carried across the courtyard without effort. "Today I present my son. Elliot, born of my true mate Sera, blood of my blood, heir to the Silvercrest territories." The words sent a shockwave through the crowd. Gasps, murmurs, exclamations of surprise rippling outward like stones thrown in water. Elliot's silver-streaked hair caught the afternoon sun. His eyes, pure silver and wide with wonder, swept across the sea of faces. Despite his fear, he straightened his small spine and lifted his chin. Damian's hand found the back of Elliot's calf, steadying him. "Any who wish to challenge his claim may face me in the circle." The challenge hung in the air. Absolute. Unmistakable. No one moved. No one spoke. The silence was complete, the kind that spoke of respect tinged with fear. Satisfied, Damian turned his horse toward the fortress steps. The crowd parted like water, creating a path. As we passed, wolves bowed their heads, to Damian, to Elliot, and to my shock, to me. The council chamber was exactly as I remembered. Dark wood panels, a semicircle of high-backed chairs, the smell of old power and older politics. I'd only been here once before as a servant pouring wine. Now I stood at Damian's side with Elliot between us, facing the 12 elders who governed alongside the king. They stared at us with expressions ranging from shock to suspicion to barely concealed hostility. Elder Thorn, the eldest and most powerful, cleared his throat. His hair was white as snow, his eyes sharp as broken glass. "We are pleased the king has found an heir," he said carefully. "Though some of us wish we had been informed sooner of certain developments." His gaze flickered to me with thinly veiled contempt. "I informed you the moment it was safe to do so," Damian said coolly. "Until then, knowledge of my mate and heir was a weapon I refused to hand to my enemies." "Enemies like your brother," another elder said. "Who you allowed far too close to the throne." "Who I have dealt with," Damian replied, steel in his voice. "Which brings us to our next order of business." He gestured, and the doors opened. My heart stuttered as Julian was led in between two guards, wrists bound in iron. He looked diminished somehow, paler and thinner than I remembered, dark hair disheveled. But his eyes were still sharp, still calculating. They swept the room and landed on Elliot with uncomfortable intensity. "So this is the grand reveal," Julian said, mouth curving in a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "The hidden heir. How very dramatic, brother." "For crimes of treason," Damian's voice cut through the mockery like a blade. "For conspiring with rogues against your own pack. For planning the kidnapping and murder of my son. For attempting to usurp the throne through violence and deception. I declare Julian, formerly of House Silvercrest, stripped of name and rank." Shocked murmurs ran through the council. "You will be exiled beyond our borders," Damian continued, never taking his eyes off his brother. "If you return, the penalty is death. Immediate and unquestioned." Julian laughed, actually laughed. "Exile? How merciful. How weak." His gaze slid to me. "Tell me, did the little Omega tell you she ran because she was afraid? Did she play the victim well?" I felt Damian's rage through the bond, a hot wave of barely controlled violence. "She ran because she heard you suggest eliminating a liability and I agreed," Damian said, voice dangerously quiet. "She ran because my own brother made her believe I would choose politics over my mate." "And wouldn't you have?" Julian's smile sharpened. If it came down to her or the throne, what would you have chosen 5 years ago? The question hung in the air, poisonous. Her, Damian said without hesitation. I would have chosen her. Every time. In every scenario. I would have burned the kingdom before letting anyone harm her. His silver eyes blazed. The only reason you're being exiled instead of executed is because you're family. Don't mistake mercy for weakness, Julian. If you threaten my son again, family won't save you. He gestured to the guards. Take him. As they dragged Julian toward the door, he looked back at Elliot one last time. This isn't over, little prince. Thrones are unstable. Kings fall. One day, your father won't be there to protect you. Elliot pressed closer to my leg, and I felt a growl building in my chest. That's enough, Damian said quietly, but the command in his voice made even the guards flinch. They hauled Julian out and slammed the doors behind them. The council erupted in whispered conversations. Elder Thorn called for order, his gavel striking the wood like a death knell. If there is no further business, he said, clearly wanting to end this uncomfortable session. There is, Damian interrupted. He turned to face the full council. I claim Sera as my mate publicly. As Luna of the Silvercrest territories. As the mother of my heir and my chosen queen. The room went deathly quiet. Your Majesty, Elder Thorn said carefully, this is highly irregular. The Luna must be approved by the council. There are protocols, vetting processes. She's my fated mate, Damian said flatly. The moon chose her. I chose her. Anyone who disagrees is welcome to challenge me in the circle. He waited, silver eyes sweeping the semicircle of elders with obvious challenge. No one moved. Then it's settled, Damian said. Sera is Luna. Any disrespect shown to her is disrespect shown to me. Any challenge to her position is a challenge to the throne itself. He paused. Are we clear? Reluctant nods circled the room. Good. We're done here. He took my hand and Elliot's, and we walked out of that council chamber as a family, messy, complicated, but together. The royal chambers were exactly as I remembered them, down to the carved wolf's head above the fireplace. The last time I'd stood in this room, I'd been terrified and pregnant and certain I was about to die. Now Elliot stood in the center, staring wide-eyed at the massive bed. This is all ours, he asked in wonder. For now, Damian said. Until we decide where you'd like your own rooms. I get my own rooms? You're a prince. You get whatever you want within reason. Damian smiled. But first, bath and dinner. Then we talk about schedules and training. A servant appeared to lead Elliot to the bathing chamber. Our son glanced back at us uncertainly. Go ahead, I encouraged. We'll be right here. Once he was gone, the room fell quiet. Damian and I stood on opposite sides, 5 years of hurt and confusion filling the space between us. I won't rush you, he said quietly. I know this is overwhelming. Being back here, facing the council, all of it. He moved toward the window overlooking the training grounds. You can have separate chambers if you need space. I won't force. Stop, I interrupted. I crossed the room to stand beside him. I don't need space. I struggled for words. I need to stop running. From you, from this, from us. He turned to face me, silver eyes searching mine. I'm terrified, I admitted. Of failing. Of not being enough. Of losing Elliot to politics and duty and all the things that come with being royal. You won't lose him, Damian said firmly. And you are enough. More than enough. You kept him safe and strong for 5 years without any help. You're the bravest person I know. I ran away. You survived. His hand lifted to cup my face. You did what you thought you had to do to protect our child. I'm angry you didn't trust me enough to stay. But I understand why you left. My failure to make you feel safe, to claim you publicly, To show you that you mattered more than politics, that's on me. The mate bond surged, warm and bright. Can we fix this? I whispered. We're already fixing it, he said. Every day, every choice, every moment we choose each other instead of fear. His thumb brushed my cheekbone. I'm asking you to trust me, Sera. To let me prove that I'll choose you and Elliot over everything else. Every time. I searched his face, looking for doubt or hesitation. Found only fierce determination and love that had survived 5 years of separation. Okay, I breathed. Show me. He leaned in slowly, giving me time to pull away. When his lips met mine, the bond flared like wildfire. 5 years of longing and grief and desperate hope poured through that connection. His hands framed my face like I was something precious and fragile. My fingers curled in his shirt, anchoring myself to him. The kiss was gentle and fierce, apologetic and claiming all at once. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, I could feel tears on my cheeks. I never stopped loving you, I whispered. Even when I was afraid. Even when I ran. The bond never let me forget. I know, he said roughly. I felt it. Every day, pulling at me, reminding me you were still out there somewhere. His forehead rested against mine. I'm not letting you go again. Ever. Good, I managed. Because I'm tired of running. The next morning, the formal announcement happened in the Great Hall. Thousands of pack members crowded in to witness Damian officially claim me as Luna. I stood beside him in borrowed formal clothes, Elliot on my other side in ceremonial robes that were still too big. Damian's voice rang through the hall. I present Sera, my fated mate, Luna of Silvercrest, and mother of my heir. The pack howled in response, the sound shaking the rafters. He turned to me, producing a silver circlet from somewhere. Not a crown, that was reserved for official queens, but a mark of rank and respect. With this, I claim you before the moon and the pack, he said, settling it on my head. As my mate. My Luna. My equal. Then he kissed me in front of everyone, sealing the bond publicly the way he should have 5 years ago. The pack howled again, louder this time, accepting what their king had declared. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright. No more hiding, he murmured against my lips. No more hiding, I agreed. The months that followed were a blur of adjustment and training. Elliot thrived under Damian's teaching, learning to control his shifts, to fight with wooden swords, to understand pack politics. He made friends among the other Alpha children, learned to read military maps, asked 1,000 questions about everything. I learned what it meant to be Luna. Cassandra became my guide, teaching me protocol and politics, introducing me to the pack's hierarchy, helping me navigate the complicated social structure I'd never understood as a servant. Some wolves accepted me easily. Others whispered behind their hands about the Omega who'd hidden the heir. But Damian's protection was absolute, and gradually, respect grew. The mate bond settled into something deeper than it had been before. We knew each other's scars now, understood what it meant to break and rebuild trust. Damian was patient with my nightmares, holding me when I woke gasping from dreams of running. I was patient with his need to keep us close, understanding that 5 years of searching had left wounds. 6 months after we returned, Damian took us to a mountain lodge for a week away from the capital. Just the 3 of us, no guards, no politics, just family. On the last night, we stood on the balcony watching the moon rise. Elliot slept inside, exhausted from a day of fishing and exploring. Thank you, Damian said quietly. For what? For coming back. For giving us a chance to fix what broke. For letting me be a father. He pulled me against his chest. For not giving up on us. I leaned into him, breathing in his scent. Thank you for not giving up on me. For searching even when it seemed hopeless. For claiming us publicly. For being the mate I needed you to be. I'll spend the rest of my life proving you can trust me, he promised. I know, I said simply. Because I could feel it through the bond, could see it in every choice he made, every moment he chose us over convenience or politics. Below us, the capital sprawled across the valley, lights twinkling like stars. Our home. Our pack. Our future. For 5 years, I'd been running from shadows and fear. Now I was running toward something better, toward hope, toward family, toward the life we were building together from the broken pieces of what we'd lost. Some bonds are worth fighting for. Some loves are strong enough to survive misunderstanding and distance and every mistake in between. Some families are written not just in blood, but in the choice to keep trying, to keep believing, to keep finding each other again and again. I turned in Damian's arms, tilting my face up to his. The mate bond thrummed between us, whole and healthy and bright with promise. "Take me home," I whispered. He smiled, that rare real smile that transformed his harsh features. "You are home," he said. "And so am I." And for the first time in 6 years, I believed it. If you enjoyed Sera and Damian's journey, let me know where you're reading from and what your favorite moment was. Rate the story from 1 to 10, and tell me if you'd like to see bonus chapters exploring their future.